Welcome to WO50 Podcast, Women Over 50 Embody Wisdom and Wellness.
I am with my dear friend Eddi, and my name is Corrine, and we took a deep dive today into reflecting the importance of reflection and looking back on the year 2023, even though we're still in it right now, or maybe when you're listening to it, we're not, but just the importance of looking back and on your life, the past year maybe, and what you enjoyed. So what did we talk about, Ed? What were the highlights?
Well, we talked about all kinds of stuff. We talked about personality traits, who was an upholder and an obliger, and you went into those tendencies of people. We gave some book ideas. We talked about our gratitude times, what we've learned in 2023. What are some of our biggest teachings?
Yeah. Yeah. Teachings, challenges. We asked kind of different questions looking back on 2023, and we talked about the importance of, and the difference between, being in the moment and purposefully and meaningfully looking back at, rather than just ruminating over and over and about it, but just sitting down, journaling about it, writing about it, and looking at just at different situations and things that reflected how we dealt with things like that, like what's important to us, what's challenging to us, what we didn't do very well, what we would do differently.
Oh, and we mentioned a few wonderful books.
Yes, we gave some recommendations, and they are in the link below. So we hope you enjoy it.
See you soon. Hello, Ken.
Hi. So
how are you?
I'm good. I'm a wee bit tired. It was Thanksgiving yesterday.
And, yes. Did you eat a variety of foods?
Yes, a big variety of foods. Even I cooked ginger carrots to bring over to my friend Kathy's place. That's nice. Colleen's recipe, where you just like literally saute the carrots in butter and add ginger at the end. It's divine. It's like they turned out like candied ginger carrots.
Oh, perfect.
So I brought that. And anyway, so usually I get invited because I'm Canadian, and Thanksgiving's very different down here. It's a really big deal down here. So everybody feels bad if you don't have somewhere to go. And I couldn't care less, really. But this year so usually I don't accept the very delightful, invitations. And I just stay quiet and enjoy, but I kind of stay quiet and enjoy a lot of the time my space here at Ivy House. So I said yes to my friend Kathy, and I know mostly her family. Like I know her mom and dad, I know both her daughters and her husband. And then also they had some other friends over, and it was really lovely. It was really, really lovely. And of course, in the South, they put meat in their vegetables. So, but I had cooked up a tofurkey with my own gravy and brought it. And then there was definitely 3 or 4 dishes I could eat. So,
that's good.
Yeah. And then different desserts, pumpkin pie, pecan pie, cheesecake. How do you choose? So you take a little sliver of everything.
Mm-hmm. I had a friend.
You don't, but I do.
No, I don't. No, I had a friend. She made a dairy-free, gluten-free, sugar-free blueberry cheesecake, and she used walnut as the base. Walnuts grounded up.
Yeah.
Used as the base, and then she used tofu and cashews ground together, and then added in a cup of blueberries and baked it.
Yep.
Just for a few minutes in a pan.
Some lemon.
Came out. Yep. And it was in a circle pan. And then at the top, like she had crumbled some nuts, on the top, like candied pecans or something like that on the top. And it was actually yummy. Yeah.
Would I think it was yummy?
No, you'd like it sweeter.
I was going to say, because usually what gluten-free, dairy-free people think is really yummy. And my sister says that to me too. I made her some, I called them brownies one time that were made with dates and walnuts. And she's like, I'm like, aren't those so good? They taste just like brownies. She goes, they're good, but to call them and taste like brownies, no, I can't go that far, but they are really good. So that's what I find with you a lot. It's like, and because you eat just so incredibly clean that when you do have little sweets like that, it doesn't take much or not even sweet. Yeah.
I know. It's funny. Yeah. Everything adjusts. It all adjusts in there. If you eat less sweets or you change it up, or you add, like some people do their teas or coffee or their lemonades and they put less sugar and they get used to it. And then
Yeah.
when they actually have a lemonade, they're like, oh my God, that's too sweet.
Too sweet.
So,
Yeah, no, it's so true. I've done that with keto. That happened to me, because I
mhm.
didn't do any sweets at all for 10 months or something. And then
Yeah.
now a lot of stuff is too sweet for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your whole microbiome adjusts.
That's
So
right. Because what do you always say about what you when you crave something?
when you crave something, we are what our microbes eat, our microorganisms eat. We
So
are
it's
not what we eat. We are what our organisms eat.
right. So
So,
it's the
and
organisms that have the craving, not you.
yes, and they also probably do a bit of reflection too, I would think.
The biome.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a leap to get onto our topic, but okay.
I try, I love those little, synapses connecting, segueing into something.
That was more like the London Bridge rather than a synapse.
That was a leap.
That was a leap. So yes, our topic is, it's not quite December, but it's going to be very shortly. And reflecting, the importance of reflecting and looking back, which is funny because, we're always teaching and preaching and practicing living in the present moment. And that's because, throughout the day, we spend most of our time, I would say 95% of our time thinking about the past or thinking about the future. And that means only 5% of ourselves is fully present in the moment most of the time, unless you're really doing something you love and then you kind of pull your attention and you're not thinking about stuff. So what I try to do myself and what I help other people with is to be more present. So when is it appropriate to look back in reflection? So this is different. It's not like your mind is taking you when you're driving to the store and your mind is taking you back to something this year or in the past you regret. This is actually sitting down to think about, what is it that I enjoyed this past year? What do I want to change? What worked for me? What didn't work for me? What were some challenges that I overcame? Kind of like that. So that's what we're discussing today, is that kind of reflection, purposeful reflection. Like,
Yes, intentional. It's intentional. We're looking back and reflecting and on the good and the bad and the ugly.
Yeah, all of it. And
All
because
of it.
once you get to a certain point too, there is no good, bad, and ugly. It's just all experience.
That's right. All experience. So
Yeah.
you go. What would you like to reflect on?
Well, should we start off with something, that what's coming up for me is just one of my challenges that I had this past year. And that I've had, in the past, and I thought I had gotten better at, but there's fine tuning, is just discerning with my space here at Ivy House and friendships and stuff. It's like in the past, when I was young, I would just make friends with everybody and everybody would be my best buddy right from the beginning. And I learned over the years to be more discerning with that and to be more protective of my time, because I do spend a lot of time and energy on how, having a good outlook and just seeing things as they are, clearly. And so if I hang out with people that are not clear too much, like, it's fine. All my friends, like, we're all different and embrace differences, but I just have become more discerning. So I have an old friend that came to visit who I hadn't seen in many years and who used to be a really good buddy. And he came and stayed here at Ivy House. And then I was leaving to go out of town to Canada. And I was like, oh, you can just stay here while I'm gone. And, we do that all the time here at Ivy House. It's kind of a open door policy. And it was a bit of a mistake because he wasn't returning my calls, didn't do the watering of my yard, and some of my flowers died. And I got back and he'd rearranged my living room furniture.
What?
I also broke my arm and called him to see if he could pick me up at the airport because he was still at my house 3 weeks later. And he was leaving that day that I was arriving, and he didn't stay to pick me up and help me with my luggage and stuff. So, and I'm not like, at first I was really, really ticked off at him and I wanted to call him and tell him off. And then I was like, whatever, he didn't do it on purpose. He's a very nice person. He just is not a great guest, or he doesn't think he's not a great guest, because he did do some things around Ivy House that he thought would be helpful. He fixed a couple of clocks that were broken and did things that so in his mind, he is a very good guest and he liked the way he rearranged the furniture. So that's why I don't dwell on it. But I learn from it. To me, it's information for the future. So this isn't a person that I will probably ask or allow to stay here again, but I'm not like angry or holding on to it either. Like I was mad at first and I processed it, with you or whatever. And then now it's like he even called me. This was several months ago. I haven't called him back yet, but I'm not even mad anymore. I'll have more boundaries with him, but I'm not upset about it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's different points of view, different, the bird's eye view, and what he sees and what you see are so different,
Yeah, because he's not a bad person.
No. And you would be the type, if this situation was, turn the tables, you would stay the extra day and pick them up at the airport and make sure the house was immaculate
and exactly the way I found it.
Yeah. Yep. And everything. And just when you're gone all that time. So, they had that free space, and sometimes it's worth having the conversation. And sometimes some people just continue to do what they want to do, and it's who they are. And maybe it's without awareness, or maybe it's awareness is placed somewhere else, right? Like, who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, I know him well enough to know that I don't know that he'd change if I talked to him. That's why I didn't have the conversation. And he doesn't live in the same town, and I don't see him a lot. If he was a friend that I saw all the time, I would definitely just have a conversation about it, not blaming and complaining, but just like, this is how I would like when you stay at my house for it to be. So what happens, what I think most people would do is just be so upset, cut him off, not talk to him, and have a big story and be mad at them forever. I don't do that. I do have some friends that I've let go of over the years, but I don't have a big story about it. It's just that we're just kind of not vibing on the same frequency anymore. And I think that's so looking back on 2023, I do have a bit of a disappointment maybe in myself that I allowed that to happen. I don't blame him. It's more me taking responsibility for me, and just being learning in the future to be a little more discerning, because our space is sacred here. And I'm, I want it to be clean and clear when people come in here. So,
and you can feel that when you enter Ivy House. It's just a beautiful space, and there's you've landed. It's almost like coming home. Whatever that feeling is, that's what it is. And I always love Ivy House because I land.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Same, and I have that kind of feeling in my upstairs space where I am now, and I have that feeling in my office where I work. And it's important, that we keep our lines of communication open with the people that we love and we have history with, because we start getting older and we reflect. And I remember Jane Fonda said one of her biggest regrets is that she never fought for her friendships. She never kept them and nourished them. And, I had one friendship that almost dissolved, and wow, we had a year apart, and it's even been in this year, and I'll reflect on that. And I just held space and hoped that it would all work out, and sat with my own self, had a conversation with the other person, and it didn't seem to resolve after several conversations. But I knew, I just felt within myself like something has to work out. The energy between us was too beautiful. And man, it worked out. This person kind of did some self-reflection and work and came to me, and we had this amazing moment, and healing happened. And, I'm not getting into story, but everybody felt good. And we just go, wow, that could have dissolved. Lots of things could have changed because of that friendship kind of splitting, but it didn't. We kind of held the space to allow each other to grow in that year, is my takeaway.
Yeah. So you didn't just decide, because that's what happens a lot of times when people either, they have a fight or they have a falling out. is they have a big story around it. And that's what, that's why I went into detail on my story and that's not story, because stories used, I went into detail of the facts of what happened.
Yes. Yes.
And that's the difference between a
Oh,
story. And I
yes.
didn't let it become a book of a big story. Right. And you
Yes.
did the same thing with your thing.
Yes.
You kind of just gave it space and allowed it to be, and you had a hope that it would resolve. And then eventually after, a year or whatever, it did. Yeah.
Yeah, and we both in both situations, we just, held love for the person.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. There's lots of love in your being for the person. And I just allowed the situation to hopefully take care of itself, but I knew where my heart was,
Yeah.
I knew. So, but I can't change that for anybody else, right? We don't know what other people are going through. And that's the other thing about taking things personally too. Like that's, you know, one of the four agreements is not to take things personally. And that's been my work most of my life, not being defensive, not assuming, not taking things personally, be impeccable with your word. Man, what one of the best books.
Yeah. Yeah. I can put a link to that. The Four Agreements is
Yeah.
something I hand out. I've probably given out 50 of those over the years. I used to buy them in bulk because you can get them at the used bookstore for like $1 each.
Oh,
And I'd
wow.
buy them in bulk and give them out to everybody who came in. I gave it to my dad years ago, and he really
I
liked it
love it.
actually. Yeah,
I
it's a
love,
good
and that
one.
book's been out a long time, so it's one of
And it's
my,
got layers to it. It's like what we understand one year. That's also one of the benefits of reflection is like, I remember I learned this working with Deepak Chopra many years ago is, when you work with somebody like that and you listen, I would hear his lectures over and over and over. And there's only so many stories he has to tell. And so I would hear the same stories, like being with him for 3 or 4 years over and over again. But I would understand every year, I would understand what he was saying a little bit deeper, a little bit more,
Mhm.
and that's, I think what we do by reflecting it and just by living life is we kind of keep going through kind of the same scenarios with different faces involved and see
Yes.
if we can get through with more grace and ease. It's never going to just be smooth because that's not what life is.
No, no. And when you reflect back on it and you go, wow, I moved through that with grace, just grace and dignity and
Or maybe I didn't
respect.
work through it in grace and maybe I could use more of it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Or we could fall into grace.
The name of a great book, is that your segue into your book recommendation?
Yes. Well, you recommended that for me, Falling into Grace, Adyashanti, and love that book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
And I
it's
read it differently. Yeah,
yeah,
every year
yeah,
it's a different read.
yeah. I listened to that book falling asleep most nights. So I've probably listened to it,
Oh,
I don't know, 50, 100 times. I did that
wow.
with Power of Now to Eckhart Tolle. I would drive back and forth between LA and San Diego years
Yeah.
ago. And I would listen to get the power because basically in the Power of Now, he keeps saying over and over again the importance of the present moment. So I would drive back and forth listening to it and just be really present with the drive and with everything. And so I did
Yes.
that with Falling into Grace too. That's
Yes.
the
Yes.
classic
That's
good
why,
one.
well, it's interesting. That's why you're great listening using Audible, and I love a book. I love having the book in my hands, but even reading The Power of Now, I kept nodding off. So when I tried to listen to it, I'm going, okay, I got to reread that again. I just fell asleep.
Yeah, that book can do that. That's why, yeah, listening to it worked a little better. And another book that I find just as powerful in a different way than Adi Shanti's Falling into Grace is a psychologist from Canada. His name is Bruce Tift, and he wrote a book called Already Free. And that
Mm,
was my favorite read this year, my favorite listen. I listened to it on Audible probably 5 or 6 times. When I was in
mm,
India, I had a bit of a challenging time in India it wasn't last year. It was just this past January, February. And
mm.
India can be challenging anyway, but it was a rough trip for me with some changes going on. And so I was listening to that book, and it's so, so, so good. It's not for people that are fairly new on the journey, because it's really deep. And yet I've recommended it to a few people, and they at first they say, "Oh, I just can't get it," but they read it again and they get it. He combines sort of the spiritual non-dualism that we talk about, of being present, being here now, and not bringing a Santa Claus bag of baggage into the present moment when you have a conversation. He combines that with psychotherapy. So he's like a Buddhist psychotherapist, and he's, yeah, really, really awesome. And you can start with a podcast. I'll maybe put a link to that, because his interview with Tammy Simon on Sounds True was
excellent.
Yeah,
I've got 2 people in mind to give that book to this Christmas. So
oh,
yeah,
okay,
he being one of them. I haven't read it yet, so I'm really
right.
looking.
Yeah, you will love it.
Yes, I know I will. And the other book I love is Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart. Even though you introduced me to the series that she did
On HBO, yeah.
on HBO, and we binge watched it. I just couldn't turn it off because I loved the whole language piece around it. And I just think that book, every teacher should have a copy of that book.
Yeah.
Because it's a beautiful
Everybody.
language. Everybody
Yeah.
should. High school kids going to university. Like it's a great book for just, everybody should read it.
Yeah. Help for communication and understanding. One of my favorite points out of that book, and out of the series as well, is that it's absolutely impossible for us to read an emotion of another person. And the way she shows that, because at first when you hear that, you'll think, no, we can tell. Well, we can, but we can't. First of all, there's happy. Most people just have 3 emotions: happy, sad, and pissed off. I think she says that's the language we have, but there's so many emotions, more that we have to describe our feelings. So she showed like 10 different clips of iconic movie moments, emotional iconic movie moments. And then she asked the audience, what is it that they're feeling? And they would all come up with, the emotion was 10 different opinions. So we cannot read the emotion of another person. How many couples or friends or whatever, they misinterpret what the other person's feeling. They make a big story up about it. And that's why I love the Atlas of the Heart so much, because it just shows you we can't know what another person is feeling.
No, and I'm guilty of that myself, thinking somebody's thinking something and they're not. It's just, it's just their face.
Yeah. Yep.
It's just their face.
Mm-hmm.
So it's better just not to think what they're thinking. Don't even think your own thought. Let that go. Like one Buddha said to the other Buddhist, he said, "Man," he said, "you are so thoughtless." And he said, "Thank you."
The other one said, "Thank you."
Yes. You're always correcting my jokes.
just trying to have a little bit of clarity there. Because you know what? I do that for several people, because it's like, I'm so like, because I
Literal.
I'm literal, I guess, but I hear with other people's ears. Like, my sense of hearing is my gift, is my dominant sense, right? So when I listen to somebody when I'm coaching, they'll speak for like 10 minutes, and one thing will stand out, and I'll zoom in on that thing. And so when I'm listening to somebody, I'm following the story in my head. And so if there's something missing, I'm like, oh, but and probably the other person filled in that part anyway, because our mind fills in so much. But but just from teaching retreats for so long, I'm so used to trying to be as clear as possible with people, which is probably going into something that I need to work on, which is taking, trying to make other people trying to help people become more comfortable, like allowing people their discomfort, right? Because a lot of times we aren't comfortable with others' discomfort. And
we've been friends so long, how can you understand fully my inner growth, right? But we know each other so well. There is I'm going to screw up a joke, and I hope one day to surprise you where I get the joke accurately. Like that's But it doesn't matter because it is what it is, right? It's just, yeah, until it isn't. Yeah.
So we talked about our books. What is
Mhm.
something that you're proud of from this past year, the challenge that you overcame that you want to give yourself a pat on the back for? I know what.
Okay, what? You go.
Sicily.
Sicily, yeah, our
That was a
trip to
challenging
Sicily.
trip, and
It was
we
challenging,
got through
and
it. Yeah.
we did because, you know, yeah, we've done trips where wellness retreats together. New York, we go to a show and we're in a place and it's comfortable. But we spent a couple of weeks, and we might have had a few comfortable days, but we just moved through it all. Like my story with sleep and I love getting my 8 hours uninterrupted. Da, 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 that didn't happen. So it was like, but at the end of it, I was okay. I was about I slept and I was thankful for a row of seats on the airplane on our big long flight. So, and I'm like, oh my God, I got 2 or 3 hours sleep. This is amazing. So yeah, I'm really delighted with myself. And with the sleep portion, the food portion, because the food, and bless your heart, trying to scoop out, gluten-free places. And we even discovered an app. What is it? Find me gluten,
My gluten-free.
my gluten-free.
Yeah.
And I just had a patient who said, we're going to Italy. What do you have any highlights to share with me? And I'm like, well, what part of Italy are you going to? Because there's lots of gluten-free options in a lot of places in Italy, but Sicily was one of the most challenging for finding it. And I'm like, yeah, we found an app. And I
Yeah.
shared that with her, and she goes, thank you, because my son is celiac and this is awesome. So, and they're not leaving till April or May. So she's going to have lots of homework done. So we were challenged by different things, but we didn't, I know I didn't feel like I did. Maybe we sound like we complained a lot. I don't know, but I didn't think we complained to each other.
We did
We did a
have
bit.
fun.
We did. We had so much fun. Our fun was when we landed at the places. Our fun was, you know, just being together. I mean, we laughed every day.
Well, what I was going to say is what's been coming up for me the last few days. The memory in Sicily was how many restaurants we would we would go to, like for dinner, and we'd sit down and we'd order water, our bottle, and they'd come in a big, huge, 2 liter at least bottle of water, still water, because we don't drink sparkling
Yes.
usually. And then, and then
We'd
we'd
have
look
the
at the
bottle
menu.
gone. Yeah.
No, we'd look at the menu,
Yes.
and we'd see that there's absolutely nothing for Eddie to eat on there, and nothing that looked appetizing to me either. And so we'd have to pay for the water and leave. So we'd have to chug the water down, and then we pay for the water and we leave, go to the next restaurant. I think this happened like this one night where same thing. We ordered water, looked at the menu right after we had just chugged the other water. Like, we have to chug the water again. We have to leave again. Do you remember that night?
Yes. And remember we got into the swing of it then. And then we got to one restaurant. We looked at each other and I went, let's not even order water.
Yeah. Because we just have to drink it and pay for it.
We gotta
Guzzle
leave.
it.
But hey, we did it.
Yeah. And the reason why is because the menus were kind of the same everywhere. They had the same food, whether you were in a coffee shop or a 5-star hotel or a cute little place. It was all the Sicilian food, which if you eat meat and gluten and dairy and stuff,
perfect.
you're great. It's perfect.
Divine,
but yeah. Anyways, so that was what I laughed about. So my challenge was definitely the driving, some of the driving, and I'm very proud of myself for doing it. I only got overwhelmed one time, which is driving in Palermo. And
which is understandable, because try driving in Palermo, people.
it's like driving in LA, in India. Really, it is. It's like it's like driving in Delhi with no lines and no rules and stuff. So, anyways, I'm proud of myself for that. So, what are you proud of yourself for, your difficulties?
just getting the sleep and just going, being okay with it, and just not having a story around it. Just going, okay, I did it. Um, yeah, yeah, and just accepting that, just because I don't know, a lot of times we hold on to, oh, I don't feel good if I don't get 8 hours, or I don't get 7 hours, or I have to. So yeah, that's the piece. Or being okay with being out of my routine and with having some discomfort. And I thought both of us, like, I don't know, just this as friends, there was no conflict. Like, we talked about it once before. There was really no conflict. It lasted only seconds when there was. It wasn't
It
worth
wasn't
it.
even a conflict. It was just an eye roll.
Yeah, it was just it's just
That's
like an irritation, just a
yeah.
rub.
There
A
was
wrong.
there wasn't any conflict.
No,
I
there
guess I don't
wasn't.
look
I
at it
mean,
that way.
no, it could have been. I wanted something to eat, and I didn't. It wasn't in time, or the wrong coffee, or And now it's like, okay, when I had a good coffee, I savored it, or I had a good tea, or I found I savored a bit more, and I'm okay even when the discomfort, kind of arose. I sat into it.
Yeah.
I sat into it more, um, less defensiveness around things with myself, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Nice.
that. Yeah, and just also being able to, even coming back from the trip, and even now back into life and family and friends and being around, I truly feel, I when I say yes to something, I want to feel it's a true yes, not to please, not to always please, or you know, and in my work life, that's kind of probably been one of my challenges. Is I would work the schedule full, over full,
Yeah.
to the point where I'm like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. So I've gotten better with that, which you have seen over the years. And when I start to slip into that old pattern again, I readjust pretty quick, or my body tells me, or my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're really good at course correction, and not having a big story about it when you're off. And then, and a big story, like I want to clarify that because sometimes it's misinterpreted.
Hmm.
It's not that you don't want to do a spiritual bypass, because spiritual bypass is like when you don't acknowledge the difficulty either in the moment or afterwards. And then having a story about it is when you keep telling people about it over and over again, and you're creating new folds and new pages in your book of your story about it. So it is important to process it with a friend or two, especially specifically challenging like that with that friend of mine. Like, I had some energy about it, and I knew I didn't want to have energy because I knew that his intention was not to be an asshole. His
Yes, that's
intention,
right.
he did nothing on purpose, and he's a wonderfully awesome person. you
Hmm.
know it's just, what from my perspective, he wasn't a good guest, but it wasn't on purpose. So that's where that's a difference. So a story, and maybe my old self or somebody else would be, oh my gosh, he's such a jerk, he used me, but he didn't do any of that. He
Yeah.
stayed at a place, and he's not the same kind of a guest as I did, period. End of story. So you
Yes.
process it either with the
Hmm.
person or with the friend. You don't
Yeah.
create a story about it. So that's a good distinction, that I feel like I'm getting, really good at over the years of course, I hope I am. I teach it, and I learn more when I teach it, is to help people discern what's alive and true in this moment, and what's the story, what's something coming from the past that's
Hmm.
affecting me, and really look at it like questioning. That's where
Yeah.
the self inquiry comes from. Yeah.
Yeah, instead of
Yeah.
holding it and letting it mull and fester and
And
grow, and
blowing up and grow. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, and then it takes on a life of its own. And it's the same thing in families, especially as we reflect back on the year, and we reflect on our family and friends around us. Families, every child in a family, when they sit down and talk about parents, it's like they all had different parents.
Yes.
Isn't that funny?
Yes, it's so
Like,
weird. Everybody's
yeah.
experience is completely different.
Yes. I mean, my younger brother, he's mid 40s. Okay. I was almost 15 when he was born. And his experience with mom and dad, well, we lost dad early, and mom's still here. She's 88, which is awesome. And his experience, like if mom's hanging out with these kids and the dogs, well, is what she did with all of us. So why wouldn't she now? It like, and I'm looking going, God, mom's 88. And well, it's wild. Just everyone's perspective. And every sibling has a different outlook and a different thing to share, and how we grew up, and my younger brother didn't see the extremes that I saw growing up, with how hard it was for parents to pull it all together with a family in a small community. And there was more community involvement where when they moved to the city, that's kind of where he grew up. So when I sit down and I speak with my siblings, it's like, wow, we didn't have the same parents,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
did.
But you
'Cause
did.
so
But it
many
helps you to
beautiful
see.
sides.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, I'm sure my 2 grandkids will say different stories about their Nana.
Yeah.
They'll go, "Oh, I remember she did this with me," and the other one will say that, right? So I'm trying to create fun and good stories around them. Yeah,
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah. You're a most amazing Nana.
Oh, I love them. They're so
No, you're
fun.
so amazing with kids, Eddie. I used to marvel at how you were with Alex when she was young, and still, you just are, and my mom's the same way. I think that's why you and my mom are so close, because my mom's like a baby whisperer, a kid whisperer, and so are you.
Yeah.
You just turn into a like being able to relate to a child, no matter if they're 2 or 5 or 10. You just zoom in, and you just are like, can captivate them, and you can be
Oh.
goofy or you can crap, and I'm
I can
sure
be
that's
goofy,
why
or I do those funny little
you
voices.
oh,
Like I remember
yes.
remember I was a sock puppet on MTV years ago with our mutual friend. That's how we met, actually, 30 something years ago. And I remember last weekend I brought Oliver and Rowan down to the Christmas fair, and he made this woman cry. She does handmade jewelry, and there was one piece he loved, and he said, "You should win best booth here because your stuff is the best ever." And she started crying. She's like, "How old are you?" And he's like, 8. And she goes, "Can I get a picture with you? Because I think you're a superstar." And he goes, "Oh, no, you are." And I'm going, wow, like amazing. Like his eye for detail and beauty and he appreciated her work. That's such beautiful gifts to see in kids. And
Yeah.
they're so smart out there these days, these little
Yeah.
ones, they're
Yeah.
brilliant little
Yeah, they are. Kids, what comes out of the
beings.
mouths of babes is just awesome. Yeah.
No, they're beautiful and smart, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing. Yeah. What
All right.
else?
So what else? So what we talked a little bit before we came on today about what we'd like to do differently or complete, or what have we been putting off? And do you want to go first?
Well, yeah, sure. Well, for me, I always have had books in the works. So, like years ago, I wrote Wannabe Walrus, a kid's book. And when my daughter had kids, I decided to pull it out of the vault. Now she's 30. So, when some of her friends read it, it's about a walrus, it's on Amazon. And when so it's kind of book on demand.
So I will
And
link that in our notes below, just so you
oh,
know, if
yeah,
you want
because
to
it's a
order
great
it.
little book.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
an
it's
awesome book with amazing pictures. So tell
Yeah,
your
because
story
it
about it,
just
because this will
well,
be.
it downloaded because it's mostly for young kids, but it's about a walrus that wanted to be everything else but himself. So he wanted to be a cow, a sheep, a dog, and he dressed in the different outfits to
and
reflect those
and
different
cute
characters.
pictures with him in the little
Great
outfits.
pictures, great art, and at the end he decided he wanted to be himself. So I decided to, when we were in LA, met with a friend, our mutual wonderful editor, and she helped me pull it together and redo it. So it's in my daughter's house. This is 30 years later, and I dedicated it to my grandkids. And her friends are reading it and saying, "Did your mom just write this? Like, this is really progressive. This is amazing.
This is
This is so
current, fluid and current.
current, so current. Like she's including transgender, non-binary, like this is amazing, bisexual, like this is I'm like, oh, wow. let me reread that book. So I reread it and I'm going, this was really cool. So it's a really sweet little story that happened so innocently. So this year, I have these little projects, these little books that have been sitting around for a while that I need to put some time aside and really get these works put out. And also my food things, my ideas around food and simple things that, I have this wonderful cookbook. I put one out years ago. So I want to do that again this year.
Yeah. So
How about you?
so making time for that, because
Yes,
you are so creative. You love you love art, you love music, you love
I do.
like anything creative, and
Mhm.
and you love sharing information. And
Yes.
so I will support you in that to help you that come into fruition, to finish those books
Thank
and
you.
get them put out.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And for me, it's my memoir. It's like kind of like hanging in the back of my mind of like getting back to it, because I started it during COVID, and I actually
Mhm.
even hired this editor that helped me put together a book proposal. So I had to do this outline for it, which was a lot of work. And
Mhm.
so I have an outline for it, and I do have a not I mean I still need to put another probably years worth of work into it. And so I'm thinking like it's been in the back of my mind. Usually when something's in the back of my mind, I kind of wait for it to come, to feel the energy for it. Like I typically, because I'm not a procrastinator. When
Mhm.
I started meditating years ago, my procrastination went out the window. But I feel like it's not procrastination. I feel like there's some blockages of like, I know my worries in the past have been, well, it seems like a little narcissistic to write a memoir. It seems like, who really cares about my story? Those are the doubts that I have. And yet when I look into it, like I have a very entertaining life, and I've learned a lot. And even if it's just for me, that I write this stuff that's just for me, and that's where I was sort of at. And then I was listening to this guy on YouTube, and about writing memoirs, and he said, do you think that it's too self-absorbed to write a memoir? And I'm like, yes, that's me. And he goes, and do you are having a hard time deciding like what to write about? I'm like, yes, that's me. Like, how many stories do you put in? So I kind of dip into it, but I would really like 2024, if the energy seems right, to work on that. And I haven't decided, like, do I need to join a writers group, or
Mm.
or something, to, because I think that's probably the only way, because
Yeah.
you're what's called I'm an obliger and you're an upholder. So there's this
Mhm.
book called The Four Tendencies that I don't like, the Enneagram things and things that classify people necessarily. There's not that it doesn't have its merit and people like it, but it just doesn't work for
Mhm.
me. But I like this one book called The Four Tendencies, that just all it does is look at how you are with commitments. That's it.
Mm.
Outer commitments and inner commitments. That's what it focuses on. And there's four different categories. There's an upholder, which is what you are, which you honor both outer commitments and inner commitments. So when there's somebody else involved, you will always show up, and when you're committed to something, but you'll also show up for yourself, with follow through. That's
Mhm.
how you've got two PhDs, and usually people that are writers and doctors, and that are kind of academic, are upholders because they honor inner commitments. I'm an
Interesting.
obliger, and you might have a little bit of obliger in you, but mostly you're an upholder. So I'll
Mhm.
describe the obliger now. So the obligers will always honor outer commitments. If there's somebody else involved, go to the gym, go for a walk, do some kind of diet with somebody, or I'm there. But any inner commitments, like exercise or eating in a certain way, or meditation, even though I've been strict with my meditation, very dedicated and committed my whole life, I'm a healthy obliger, but I will let down myself. And
Mm.
I'm a healthy obliger so that I don't feel guilty about it when I do that. But most obligers feel horribly guilty because they feel like, why can't I ever follow through with things? You know?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And then and most people, 35% of population are obligers. And they say yes to everything usually. And then there's two other categories. There's a rebel and a questioner. And the questioner is, they'll do what you ask them as long as they know the why. And then the rebel is somebody that if you ask them, if they know you want to do something, they will do the opposite. So you have to kind of work around, like they'll always want to rebel against whatever. Your daughter's probably a rebel. and
Probably.
yeah. So, anyways, that has helped me over the years to understand, so long story, I went way around the circle in that. With my book, that's why I'm thinking of going into a writer's group, because I know I'm an obliger. So how an obliger gets around that is you hire somebody or work with somebody. So for me, when I would go to the gym, I'd have to have a trainer. When I, for meditation, I had an ulcer. So that's what kept me on my meditation. But for anything that I need more discipline to, I have to have another person involved.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. That's really good information. Yeah. Yeah, I totally feel I'm so accurate with upholding.
Upholder.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
You and Colleen both. And my sister. Well, and my sister too. I have
Isn't that
all kinds of
interesting?
upholders in my life.
Wow. Wow. And
But
neither one is better than the other one. It's just
no,
part of your
it's
trait,
right. That's
personality
the
trait.
thing is that we all have all of them in us to a certain amount, but there's one we operate. So that's why I like for people to understand that within themselves. That's why I'm passionate about knowing yourself, is because when you understand that, then you know what you need in order to complete your goals. So I know for the memoir, I need to maybe, and even saying it out loud, I probably need to join a writer's group to get going on it, because it doesn't seem to be happening with just me.
Yeah, that's a good point. See, so I think now that we know what we want to do for 2024, which adds up to 8, is we can get it done. So we just encourage each other and ask each other, how's it going with that? Not with any pressure. And if it didn't get done this year, there's next year. So, we're all going to start New Year's resolutions and that kind of thing. Start one today. Do one in April. Do another one doesn't have to be at January, because people always feel like they failed if they don't, they mess up their New Year's resolution. So that'll be another podcast, won't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We can talk a little bit more about that in the new year, but this is kind of the first step. Why we wanted to talk about this is the first step is really a reflection. So I think it's even more important, or maybe just as important. I don't know. I don't, like that. And I think you don't either, the New Year's resolution, because it sets you up for disappointment. But there are ways to reflect and to have goals with some fluidity to it, but some accountability, finding a balance in whatever works for you. But the reflection of 2023 is important. And Eddi and I encourage you to do that, to look back on what you want more of that you did in 2023, what you want less of, and how to do it. Because I know, if, for instance, couples, you get in a rut, and I remember years ago that one of my accountants years ago, he used to do a retreat with his wife once a year, where they would just focus on their relationship and talk about what was working and what wasn't working. I try to encourage couples that I work with to do that like once a week, to check in and have like a date night where it's not a bitch session, but it's like, what did you do this week that I really found helpful and I appreciate it, I would love for you to do more of? And what did you do this week that wasn't maybe so supportive, and maybe we can change? Because how many couples don't talk like that?
Yeah, a lot.
Right? Because life goes, it's so busy, and you just push it under the rug and you don't talk about it. It'll get better, but it builds up. When you push it under the rug, the dust gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then there's a big mountain on your rug of dust and unspoken words and that builds up into resentment.
Yep. Yeah. And getting peeved.
Yeah. And having a big story about it because they're not doing, but you haven't communicated. We already discussed in the beginning, you can't read somebody's emotions. That's the biggest thing with couples and friends and family members, is you make all these assumptions about what they're doing. And that's a good thing to remember too, going into the holidays, is that people aren't an asshole on purpose. We think, oh, they're just trying to push my buttons. No, that means you have a button to push. You have a wound. So when somebody irks you, you look back here. It's not about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And there's lots of people out there that are amazing teachers, aren't they?
Oh, there's so many things. Life is our teacher. Life is our lesson.
Yeah.
2023 was fast.
Very fast. I cannot it went by very fast, and
Like,
everyone says it.
I
So
feel like it was yesterday that you came to Nashville in March this year and June, which I loved. But
yeah,
that was early in 2023 that you were here, and it seems like
yeah.
10 years ago and a week ago all at the same time. Same with
Yes, and
Sicily.
everything we've done, like it's like, I had my pickleball game yesterday, and everyone's like, "We haven't seen you in a while." I'm like, "Yeah, I was in Sicily," and we're all catching up, and everybody had been traveling, but it felt like it was last year that I had
Yeah.
had that conversation with them.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
so, savor the moments, enjoy your reflections.
Yeah. So you're not dwelling in the past, but when you have you mindfully sit down and journal about it and write about it, you ask yourself unique questions, not just like, what did I like about last year, but like, what was hard for me last year? What am I proud of myself for from last year?
Mhm.
What do I want more of? What really worked for me last year? Really looking at things that way. And then in that intention going into the new year. Yeah.
Yeah. Be reflective.
I love talking to you. You know that?
Me too. We never run out of things to talk
No,
about.
we don't. And we didn't in Sicily too. I don't think we had one meal where we weren't speaking. It's like we're always like talking about something unique. I remember being in relationships before where after you've been around somebody for a year or two, it's like you have so many meals where you don't have anything to talk about. But that never seems to happen with most girlfriends.
No, there's lots to talk about. As long as you want to share it, there's lots to talk about.
That's true. That's a good key, Eddie, as long as you want to share it. We encourage you to share and to be open and transparent, because ultimately we're all the same. Even though all 7 billion people on the planet, we're all having a different bird's eye view, as you would say. We're having a different view. We still all want love and happiness and peace and contentment, every single human being on the planet. They might be going about it in a different way than we would, but we're all human. We all want the same things. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Until next time.
Love ya.
Love
Thank you for
too.
listening. Thank you for tuning
Thanks.
in. Share it with somebody who you think might need it.